Hi, I'm Esther Crew. I'm the CEO of Inclusion Live, and you're listening to the Best is Leadership podcast. And today I'm really excited. I'm joined by Jamie Peacock. Those of you that are into rugby will recognise the name and doesn't need an introduction, but I ought to tell you that he's had a stellar career in rugby league. He's played over 19 seasons. He captained England for 8 years. He collected 49 caps along the way. And actually, our paths crossed with his work outside of rugby league following his retirement, where he works with organisations thinking about how to build champions, how to create high-performing teams. So I'm absolutely delighted you've joined us today, Jamie. Maybe you can do better justice. I know you're MBE for your services to the game. Tell us a little bit more about you and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Esther. First of all, it is really good to be on here. I'm looking forward to having this chat around leadership. I think you did a great job of talking about me there. I mean, I had a successful rugby league playing career over, nearly 20 seasons. Had some wonderful times, wonderful memories at, the Leeds Rhinos and Bradford Bulls, and then had a long career, with Great Britain and England too as well, and retired 10 years ago now, 2015, and since 2015 been working in leadership development, personal development, and well-being as well, areas that I am passionate about and areas that, I really do enjoy talking about as well.
Yeah. Well, why don't we kick off? Because we're all in the business of high-performing cultures and what leaders need to bring. And when we were chatting pre-recording, we were talking about your early years and how they changed over time in your leadership approach. So maybe we start there. What were your big takeouts from that period?
Yeah, so I think, wind the clock back maybe another 20 years, probably 2003, I was beginning to establish myself as a bit of a leader within the Bradford Bulls team. And 2004, did some captaincy there and began to captain Great Britain as well. And I was thinking, before I went on, that like the kind of fundamentals behind my leadership style then was very different to how my career finished at 2015. So I think people talk about old school, but it was more around, you lead by example, you embody the values that the team wants to possess and the culture. If it's hard working, then you've got to be the best at hard working. I think it was around delivering on my word. If I said I was going to do something, I'd do it for the team and for myself and for individuals. And then I think as well, the third thing was kind of holding people to account. These are the standards we expect. If you don't reach these standards, I'm going to let you know about it and the standards that we expect from you. And I think that was how my kind of leadership journey started, around those three. But began to pivot and turn, society changed, sports begins to change. And I think as I progressed in my leadership, it became not just about standards, right? I basically spoke about personal standards, team standards, cultural standards there, and how you deliver on them. It became about the person, I think, more than anything, about building good relationships with people and my teammates, but then also showing kind of vulnerability as well, showing your frailties as a leader and allowing them to connect with people within your team. So it's all right not to be perfect all the time. We've got to have a high bar, but we will have mistakes and we will get things wrong. And, I've got stories from my career just learning from that. So a couple would be, one time we were losing games and we'd lost like 3 or 4 games on the road, which is unusual for us. And our last training session would be a team run, captain's run, must be a really intense training session the day before we played a game. But our captain's run was terrible that day. Balls were down, mistakes were made, people were in the wrong positions. It wasn't a high intense training session. So I could feel myself getting more and more passionate about this lack of standards being met. And as the training session finished, captain, you get the final word. And I just ripped in at people going this is unacceptable. We're losing games. Our standards are down. Our standards are poor. And as I'm berating people and raising my voice, I can see I'm losing the group. I've got that emotional intelligence to read. I'm losing the group. But I'm down this path, so I'm continuing on with it anyway and finish my point, walk off. And as I'm walking off back up to the dressing room, I just realised, I've made a big mistake here. The group, needed some love there. They didn't need somebody to hold them accountable to them high standards. We'd lost 3 or 4 games in a row. So I realised then for me it was a bit of a pivot in how I do things, that it's good to hold people accountable, but you've got to be able to flex how you do that and read the situation a little bit better. And then another one just about, admitting frailties would have been the 2008 World Cup. We weren't successful for England in the World Cup, and I think one of the reasons why we had 2 out of the 24 players in the squad, I think 19 were made from two different teams. One was Leeds, one was St Helens. I was from the Leeds camp. We've created a big rivalry between the two sides over 3 years, which meant no one would admit to any mistakes during the World Cup. When we made a mistake on the pitch, no one would say anything because they thought, I'm not giving them an edge. Realise that didn't create a great environment to be successful. If you can't admit to your mistakes, you're never going to get better. You're only going to get worse. So for me, the following season, I made that effort with England. Like, if I made a mistake, I'd be like, this is me. I own it. Don't care what, other people think of me within it. This is how I am. I'm far from a perfect player. And I think that helped create an environment where people spoke about psychologically safe, could own up to mistakes, that vulnerability. And I think that leadership journey of mine, like, pivoted more around people than standards at the end of it. I think at the start of my journey, it had been 80% about standards and 20% about people, and probably flipped to like 80% about people and 20% about the standards that you set with it as well, with it in that time. And I think society's reflected that.
I think we've woken up a little bit to that sensitivity and that appreciation of being human. I talk about it being human first. They were both brilliant examples. Just to pick one of them, you said that you had this realization. So what went on there? I don't know which example really resonates more for you around the realization, and could we unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, like the early one, I'm trying to unpack that. So as I'm delivering the talk, I'm picking up on people's body language. I can tell I've not got eye contact. I can tell that how I'm shaping this talk is landing not in the right place at all. And as I'm walking off from this, I'm having a self-awareness to think, right, well, why has this not landed well? What is it about? Because normally people, if I say something by ear and I get nodding heads, I get good eye contact. And I thought, I've delivered the wrong style of talk at the wrong point. People are down, right? People need a lift rather than being berated with it. So I think the next time we are in a situation like this, then I need to change and I need to develop as a leader to have a wider skill set than just that's not good enough, to do it better, right?
Yeah. And just thinking about that, because you were walking away, you were having the reflection, you connected that, you said you talked about your emotional intelligence, you connected what was going on for them and what was going on for you. What happened immediately after that? So you're walking away. Did you then revisit it with the team, or how did you sort of move forward?
No, so for me, I was going dressed away and thinking about how I need to do that better the next time round. And then, when in the dressing room 2 days later, we're playing the game, I speak about, look, we've just got to back ourselves here. Our training went up to sketch before, but it doesn't mean we can't put in a great performance here. Yeah. So we need to be confident in what we're delivering. We're all good players in this room. We're just struggling with our form at the moment. So let's go out and be good players. Okay, let's go out and focus on the things we do well. I got it wrong by telling you all we were crap, right?
Yeah, maybe there were some turns of phrase you used as well. We won't go into them.
Yeah, exactly.
Them now. But I think that candour that you're sharing is super important. Do you see that time and again in terms of just that openness, that sense of, being real and being prepared to admit your mistakes? What difference has that made?
Yeah, I just think it's a great point, Esther, that authenticity as a leader is so important. With it, I think, first of all, because if you bring your whole self and your authentic whole self into leadership, people know what they're getting all the time, right? Don't they? And it gives them consistency. Like human beings perform at the best when they're in a safe environment. As a leader, you create a safe environment for people by your behaviours and your authenticity within that, so people get that. I think when you're authentic, people trust you, because they know what they're going to get, and with it. And I'd say to some people, you might not always like what I'm going to tell you, right? But I'm always coming from it from a good place, right? If I don't like it, I won't tell you. I won't hold you accountable to what we're going to say, right? With it. So I think your authenticity in leadership, and then just admitting your frailties. I think there's another little bit of story on that. So 2005 at the Bulls, we were a bit off. We were way off getting back to the grand final on that. And one of the things was probably we were going out, and as a team we were probably celebrating and drinking a bit too much, right? And I thought we've got to knuckle down here with this. But I'd realised, we played Friday. I'd been out Friday with the team. I've been out Saturday with my friends, and then Sunday with family. So on the Monday, I don't come in and just go, right, we've all got to stop drinking. I come in and say, look, I have realised this weekend, this is what I've done, and I think it's unacceptable for us to do this, is that if we want to win the grand final, we need to make some sacrifices. I'm not doing them at the moment, but going forward, I am going to do them. I'm going to make the sacrifices for the team. Now, I think we should all join in this process. Now, I think that's authentic leadership, instead of just going in and saying, this is what we need to do, and not admitting what you're doing wrong at the point. Yeah. And I know for me that allows me to connect with other people far better than just not admitting, when you're wrong or when you make mistakes.
Yeah. And I was just thinking as you were talking about, the opposite of that, which is, you're an athlete, you're training hard, you're pushing yourself. I think I've read some of your material around you take a sauna until you're screaming to get out, that because you're building resilience. And actually, it can be hard in an environment where it's all about resilience and pushing through, to then say, actually, I've got all these soft spots, I've got these vulnerabilities. How do you navigate that as a leader in that environment then, where the expectation is that you are going to see things through, but it's, you're admitting that you're human and you've got challenges?
Yeah, I think, it's a good question. So I feel that the ability to admit, mistakes or frailties or softer spots has to come from a place where you actually are resilient and consistently deliver.
Okay, that's interesting.
If you admit to having frailties and softer spots, but then you don't really perform and you're not really resilient, then no one's going to follow that, right? But I think because I had a high level of performance and I had a high level of resilience, the harder the game got, the more I personally preferred it. But I could still admit, do you know what, I got this wrong, or I'm not so sure about this, or can you help me with this? I think you have to have both those working together to get it right. I don't think you can be super resilient and then not make any mistakes. And I don't think you can be unresilient and mix a lot of mistakes. Neither of those are successful strategies as a leader.
Yeah. And I think I totally agree. So I think being able to admit mistakes is being resilient in its own right, isn't it? It's about saying, I'm always going to take the learning. I've always got something, that I recognise I need to work on or grow, or indeed how we work together. And your story about sort of the team where you had the competitive rivalry, Leeds and St Helens, and I grew up very close to St Helens, so I'm familiar with the rivalry. How do you nurture that? Almost like get beyond the rivalry into something that turns into a strength, because that's what we'd love to learn, isn't it? What are the strengths that you can bring out through overcoming competitiveness, but identifying opportunities?
I think it's just maybe around creating common ground with people. I think that's really important. You might not always like everybody you work with or everybody you lead, but you can still create common ground, and you can create shared interest between you just by asking questions and listening. Asking questions and listening is such a powerful thing to do as a leader, and listening properly and remembering that information and building that relationship. Then over time, I think you have to understand that you won't like everybody, not everybody will like you, but you can still work together for a common goal. So I think if you create common ground by listening to people, by talking to people, then you can have a common goal together as well with it. And it's surprising how much that will bring you together as people. I really do believe that. And I think it's about, for the Leeds and St Helens, it's about pivoting that competitiveness against each other to why don't we be competitive for England against Australia and New Zealand together, right? Let's do it together, and just getting to know people. I just think that's a big, I made more of an effort to get to know the Saints players after that 2008 World Cup, because I thought we all play the same sport, so we must have some things in common, do you know?
Yeah, well, same passion, same drive, I imagine. Really, really interesting. So you've spanned this career, and I don't want to leave the rugby behind, but I do want to think about what do you see is true today in businesses that you lived and experienced and were a leader around on the field?
So I do believe setting standards is hugely important still as a leader. I think you need to have high personal standards of whatever field you're working in. You need to, show up, turn up, deliver on your word. I think that's hugely important still, delivering on your word. If you say you're going to do something for somebody, then you do it, and I think that's just such a superpower as a leader, and it don't require any talent really. It just requires a bit of hard work and not over-promising people as well with it. I think they're the two things with it. And I just think that can make such a difference to people because people kind of trust you. My theory on leadership is like 2 5-letter words make the world go around. One's money, right? But the other one's trust. And that's your currency as a leader, right? You need trust. If you think about the best environments you've ever worked in or the best leaders, I reckon you trust them to deliver on the word. But I think you trust them morally and value-wise as well, don't you? You trust them to do the right thing for the right reason. So that they're, I think, powerful things that come from the sporting field, because the sporting field is really black and white in it. I'm going to do this for you. This is what it looks like, right? But that's translates really easy into business as well. I'm going to turn up for your one-to-one every single time. I'm going to be there for you. I think I know I'm digressing, but that's a big thing from my time outside sport now is like one-to-ones. I think that's just a big thing as a leader is that, if you say you're going to have your one-to-one with people, then you do it and you do it consistently and that builds trust and it says to that person, you're important to me. If you're shunting them about all the time, that says you're not that really that important
exactly.
to me.
Yeah.
You're really not that important to me. You don't think it's saying that, but it's saying that every time you move it with it. And I think it's the biggest number one gripe I have from people around that. And I think it's so easily fixable is to do that.
Yeah.
So that's the important one, delivering on your word. If you say it, you're going to do it, you follow through on it. And then I just think, just trying to build relationships with people. Actually, like caring. I think that's important to care about people. I think if you could get those two things right, caring about people and listening and then delivering on your word, I think you're going a really long way to being effective as a leader. And they work both in sport and they work in business as well. It works in schools, wherever you want to go, right? And they're things you can consistently work on.
Yeah. I love the fact you started with, we put money aside because actually you didn't linger on the other 5-letter word too much. Yeah. And I think everyone's got their own different motivations. But I think trust, if you don't have trust, you don't have a relationship really. And I think if you don't have a relationship, then you're not going to strive. You're not going to do your best. You're going to feel you're second guessing yourself all the time. You're worrying about being vulnerable because of what that person might do with it. So I think you're absolutely right. Trust is at the heart of it. And you've mentioned it. We have talked about psychological safety, which sounds like a bit of a buzzword, but it is that sense of you can be yourself and you can just, when you speak to someone, you're not worrying about what you're saying, because if you are, you're holding back, aren't you? You're keeping something away. But the one-to-one thing is a really simple thing that I think leaders don't spend enough time on these days. I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago and they were saying they got a new boss and it took them 6 weeks to have a one-to-one with them. 6 weeks, but I think that says more about the leader than the person. I think that says about the leader saying, I'm not ready for you. I don't want to engage with you. I'm not willing to show myself in this. What's your take on that? Because one-to-ones is a big factor of what you've been talking about.
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly long time to wait. And you're right, it says more about the leader. I think that'd be the number one thing you'd want to do is get to know people, listen to them and hear about them and build those relationships. I think that's the most important thing to do in your first 4 weeks as a leader in any. Take time to digest it and work things out afterwards. But you just got to realise that's the important part of it. The people are going to be the important part of it. And if you show that just effort and commitment to care for them, you'll get it back. 98% of the time you'll get it back.
And actually, one-to-ones don't need to take very long. We talk about it as almost like a really simple thing. But actually, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, it doesn't have to feel like an hour, does it? Our sweet spot for podcasts is around 20 minutes, 23, 18, because you can do a lot in that time. So, thinking about being time pressed, have you got any strategies that you would apply? Because obviously in the heat of a match or a game, should I say, you're going to, time is of the essence, isn't it? So what would you take out of that?
I think it's different within a game. It's funny how your communication in the game has to be very clear and very direct, and people need to understand that. There's a great saying that I'm attacking the problem, not the person here, right? So if I'm direct with it, I'm not going to go at you. We just need to solve what we're doing. But during the week, you've got that more time to build deeper relationships with people. You're in the gym having a chat. That's when you build those one-to-ones. But I do really agree with that. So that I think when we say that, when you go, well, you need to keep your one-to-ones, you go, well, I ain't got an hour for everybody in my team to do this every week. You're right. It's not that. It's like it's catch-ups and it needs to be 15, 20 minutes. But the key with it is making sure it sticks. You know, you say you do it on a Monday, it happens on a Monday, right? And unless like you have to go to the hospital or something, it doesn't change.
Yeah.
And then also in that meeting, you actively listen. You listen properly to that person. You're present to what you're doing, and they're things I think every leader can find the time to do that. Every leader should be able to find the time to do that.
One of the tools we use with organisations is our model we developed called Quadra Leaders. It's got, 4 stages, 4 elements to it. And the key element that a lot of leaders forget is this consistency piece. And I think you've talked about that a few times in the podcast. So what would you say is really important for leadership in terms of being consistent? Is there any takeouts that you would share from your experiences?
Yeah, I think I agree 100%. Consistency is key. I think like anyone can be a champion for a day, but can you deliver it week in and week out, right? And I think the same within sport. So, players, you get players who are 9 out of 10 one week, then a 6 or 7, where I kind of prided myself on being between 8 and 9 every single week. There's not much deviance between my performance. And that only comes, I think, from understanding, what you bring and what you want to value. I think as a leader, if you want to be consistent, then maybe work out the 2 or 3 things that you want to be consistent around, right? What is it? Your style of feedback? Is it delivering on your word? Is it giving people praise? What do you want to be consistent on? Then I think the biggest single way to be consistent is to journal about yourself each day, score yourself out of 10 each day. If you score yourself out of 10 each day, say you want to be patient as a leader, and that's your consistency, right? And you want to listen to people properly. That's a consistent thing. And you want to deliver on your word. They're 3 things. Well, why would you not score yourself out of 10 each day and spend 10 minutes in the day and say, well, did I deliver on these 3 things today? And if you do that, then it holds you accountable, because quite often in the leadership role, no one holds you accountable. It's you, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And it allows yourself to score yourself each day, and it will make sure you're consistent, And if you're not consistent, it'll give you the backdrop to maybe if I was 3 out of 10 for being patient that day. Well, what was that? Why was it? Was it lack of sleep? Was it an external pressure? So that being my thing, it's simplified. Will be pick 3 values or 3 things as a leader you want to be consistent at. Score yourself out of 10 each day. And if you're above or below where you want to be, what's the context behind it? And that'll keep you accountable.
I love that. I love it because it's a really simple model, that, isn't it? Be clear, identify, reflect, learn, hold yourself accountable. You mentioned that sort of sequence. So what would you say distinguish you as a leader through your career? What were the 3 things that you have always held on to? What are the strategies you would share at this moment?
I think I'm going to go back to another one. What was important to me was to deliver on my word. If I said I was going to do something for you or the team, it's getting done, right? Regardless of, how difficult the game is or what, I'm going to deliver on my part of what I need to do for the team. My second thing I think is just clear communication. I think you'll always know where you stand with me with it, and that's good and bad. If you do something great, I am on that, right? I'm straight on that all over it. Some people think that clear communication means you're on it berating people. I'm not like that. I can hold you accountable and say, listen, that needs to be better than what you're doing there. But I'm also all over, if you do something well, I'm all over praising that as well with it. And I think what would be the final one be is just building relationships. I think as I got older, I understood the power of listening to people and actually following through on things. And if you care about people, you just get it back.
Fantastically relevant to any leader, up and coming, experience, whatever your workplace context, even if you're in sport. They're great strategies. So thank you so much for sharing them. They've worked for you and the things people can take away as well. Thank you very much for joining the Best is Leadership podcast. Everyone that listens gets a handout where we pinpoint the takeaway tools and learnings that you can go and try yourself based on everything we've talked about. Any final words, Jamie?
No, just thank you for being on it. It has gone really quickly, actually. I'm like, wow,
Really
let's
quick.
go quickly. So I really enjoyed it, Esther.
Me too.
Great to be on here.
Me too. See you again soon. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks.